Greetings, everybody. This is TV Skywriter. This is where I talk to people from the creative side of life, usually musicians and actors, authors, dancers, whatever. But today, we're going to talk to someone very special. His name is Gabe O'Neill. Of course, I didn't give my name. I should have. My name is Patricia Murray. I'm here in Durham, North Carolina, in the USA. I do this every week, and if you want to be on the show, just write to me at durhamskywriter@gmail. Now, today's guest, Gabe O'Neill, runs two organizations. The one we're going to talk about primarily is called Kids Are Heroes. Gabe O'Neill lives in Maryland, USA, and he and his daughter run this organization. Welcome to the show, Gabe.
Well, thank you very much, Patricia. It's nice of you to have me.
Absolutely. As with a lot of people, I met you on Google+. What's really cool about Google+ is that there's different communities that you join, and you can find people with like interests. So I ran across you, and we've been talking off and on just a little bit over the past couple of months, and I'd like to ask you what Kids Are Heroes is all about.
Okay, what's it all about? Well, it's actually an organization that my daughter founded. She's my daughter Mary Margaret when she was just 9 years old. She came to me and asked me to build her a website. I said, "What do you want to do with it?" And she said, "Well, I just heard in science class that there's all these endangered animals, and I want to stop that. I want to save all the endangered animals. So I want to build a website about animals." So I said, "Okay," and I thought this would be a good father-daughter project that we could do together. But as long as I'm building a site, why not see if we can open it up and not only help animals, but help people too, and maybe the environment. And she agreed with that. And so we sat down, we had business meetings, and we talked about a bunch of different things. And we had learned about all these kids that were giving of themselves. And my daughter herself had given up her 9th birthday gifts for the Defenders of Wildlife.
Wow. So what did she do exactly?
What did she do? Oh, she just gave up her birthday gifts and asked people to donate to the Defenders of Wildlife. And so that's a very simple way that kids can give back, because they don't really need all the stuff that they get. And she ended up, I forget how much it was, but it was a considerable amount of money. And they gave her a certificate and all that. And but the idea is that just that these kids are giving of themselves. And I said, well, what if we just started showcasing them? And Mary Margaret agreed, and so we put spotlights on them. And again, this was designed so that a father could do some meaningful work with his daughter when she's growing up.
Yeah.
And yet, once people kind of got wind of what we were doing, it took on a life of its own, and it grew, it blossomed far beyond myself and my daughter. Now we showcase 395 heroes, I believe it is, from 17 countries, and
That's amazing.
And we've been doing it since 2008. So we're in March we'll go into our 7th year, and that's supposed to be the magical year where things really happen. Wow. So I'm excited about that. So yeah.
If you don't mind, I'm just going to read off just a few of the projects that young people around the world are doing.
Okay.
I have here where there's a kid who is collecting and distributing socks and shoes to homeless children, and that's needed. There's another kid. This is amazing. He's raising money for medical equipment and supplies, and helping to transport people so they can get their medical treatments. That's amazing. And then this last one really blew my mind. This kid's in India. She's challenging the caste system in her village, and this resulted in more kids being allowed to go to school and jobs for many men and women in the village. That to me is mind-blowing.
And I think that's Artie you're talking about. Yeah, the thing that's really cool about them, about Artie, and there's also Reena Kumari, who's also from India. Both these kids live in absolute poverty, and so there's no raising money for anything. They can't really do it, but they can still be heroes. And Artie, as you said, is challenging our caste system. Reena, who is kind of really into her shell, went to this school through the Satyabharti. They both come from the Satyabharti school system, and that's another story in and of itself that helps kids
Okay.
get education.
Oh, I'll have to
And
look that up. Okay.
yeah, and it's amazing. And what they do for these kids, they're focused on the girl child because a lot of that's not a big priority in some countries over there, and
Right, right.
so they focus on the girl child, but they're trying to give these kids education, and also not just education, but make them good citizens, and kind of so their mission is aligned very close to ours. So what Rena does is that in her village, people don't they're all poor, so they use the trees that are growing around them for
Mm-hmm.
fuel, so they just cut them
Mm-hmm.
down. So
Okay.
she what she does is she created this anti-deforestation campaign and talks about it publicly. And here's a girl who was totally into her shell and could barely even speak or write. And then when she went to the school, she blossomed and now is leading this anti-deforestation campaign. So
Wow.
there's just and here these people are they have nothing yet they are true heroes, and that's why so I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of all the other kids that are doing such amazing things, because what if you think, well, can a child accomplish this, can a child accomplish that, can a child start a foundation that has drilled 800 wells in 16 countries, and he started when he was 7? Well, yes, they can, because that's Ryan.
Wait,
That's
wait a minute. A kid
one of
did
our kids.
that?
One of our kids is Ryan Hurljack from Canada, who when he was when he was a kindergartner, he learned that people could not get clean drinking water in Africa, and he didn't
Okay.
understand it. He said, "Why? I just go down to the water fountain right down the hallway." And so that baffled him. So his teacher told him that it cost $2,000 to build a well. So he asked his parents. He said, "Mom, can you give me $2,000?" And she said, "Well, no, and but you can use your allowance, and you can." So he did. He worked for it for like a year, and he came back to the same teacher, and he said, "Here's $2,000. Can you build me a well, please?" And she was the teacher. The
Wow.
teacher was really taken aback because she didn't really know the first thing about how to actually build it, but she looked into it for him, and she came back. She said, "So I'm sorry, Ryan. I thought it was 2,000, but it's actually 4,000." And instead of just
Wow.
taking that money and going buying new bikes and Nintendos and stuff, he was determined. He got his community involved. He raised the other $2,000, and when he was 7 years old, he drilled his first well in Africa. And
That is
he
wild.
also he went to Africa, to the village where the well was dug, and his mom is there's a video of him on our site where his mom is driving, and he's just walking down the lane, the village lane, and the street is lined with people, and they're clapping like this.
Oh
And
my God.
it's the most I get goosebumps every time I tell this story,
Oh my
because it's just such
God.
amazing. He's just wandering, looking at all this. He said, "Mom, that's my well." And I mean, it was just, and he's so proud of himself. That was when he was 6 years old. Well, Ryan is now
Jeez.
in college, and Ryan's Wells Foundation has dug over. I think I have older numbers actually. It's over 800 wells in 16 countries, and that's because I
Absolutely
started.
unbelievable.
Yeah, and
Wow.
so he's at one end of the spectrum, and we have other kids like Jordan Urbach, who's raised millions of dollars for Children's Hospital. I mean, literally millions of dollars. And he was, he's a violin virtuoso, and he hosts these concerts and he's so good, he makes tons of money, but he donates it all. And when there's
Wow.
there's a bunch of kids on our site that are like that. But that might intimidate a lot of the kids who will say, you know what, they might think that I could never do all that or whatever. But then, as I said, we paint all the stories with the same brush because of
Mhm.
little Nicolina, who's 6 years old. She decided she wanted last year, and she's local here. She wanted to give up her birthday gifts, just like Mary Margaret did.
Mhm.
But instead of going to the Defenders of Wildlife, it went to just to buy mosquito nets for people in Africa to help prevent malaria. And so, because they're
That's good work. That's
yeah,
good work because that could. I mean, that helps a lot of people.
right, and
That's a
and
big problem over there.
they're only $10 a piece. So the first
Mhm.
year,
Mhm.
when she was 6, I don't know, she raised a nominal amount of money. But now she just had her 7th birthday, and I think she raised over $500 this time. And so and this is something, and what we've learned through this. I mean, we've learned that what these kids are doing not only benefits the parties that they're targeting, but it also turns them into to leaders. They are learning
Hmm.
so many different things about how to raise money, how to resource management. Many of them are asked to speak in public, or they're being interviewed on live TV or in the
Wow.
radio. And then
Wow.
and there's many adults who cannot deal with that kind of stuff. Mary Margaret, my daughter, was asked to speak in front of 500 at the Disruptive Thinking Conference in Richmond, Virginia last year, and she was also on the Ricky Lake Show when she was
Oh,
12.
wow.
So
Okay.
if you can think of what that does to boost the confidence of a 12-year-old girl, and actually when she got a standing ovation at the speech, and
Wow.
at the end of it, instead, one woman came up to her and she said, you're not only empowering children when you get up and speak like that, you're empowering women because there's not
Hmm.
that many female speakers. So there are so many benefits from this activity, and that's really a lot of the things that we want to share with parents.
I'm wondering, how many of these kids have you met? I think you said 395 heroes on your website alone. How many have you spoken with or met over the
Well,
internet?
we've spoken with some. Of course, a lot of the parents we keep in touch with email.
Hmm.
We've Skyped with a few of them. We have Kids Are Heroes Day. This will be our 6th annual one, and so we have gotten to meet quite a few of them. I would say probably not even half, because there's some parents that, quite frankly, they get their kid on the site and then we never really hear from them again. But
Hmm.
that's their choice. I mean,
Sure.
we're trying to do is, excuse me, build a community where we keep in touch, and the folks that are involved with us the most get the most back by all the opportunities that we get to offer them. For instance, we did get one of the boys, when Mary Margaret was asked to be on the Ricky Lake Show. They asked us, well, do you have any other heroes in California? And I said, yes, we do. And we had one right in their area. So
Wow.
he ended up getting on the show as well. So we try and offer heroes as many opportunities as we can. But we have met a few, and I think there's 37 registered to come this year. And I already met Muku from Abu Dhabi, and he was absolutely wonderful, and he is so excited to be here.
That's
He is,
amazing. I saw the picture on your website. He and his entire family are coming or have
yes,
arrived.
they got sponsored from the government of the United Arab Emirates to come. It's funny because they actually got a write-up in their country at the national newspaper in the United Arab Emirates that
Awesome.
said this boy, he's called the paper bag boy because he gets people to stop using plastic, and he said that this boy is being honored in a global kids summit in the United States, and that's really
Ooh.
what it is.
Uh-huh.
And so he got us press over there, so I thought that was pretty cool.
That's
But
awesome.
so he's never been to the United States before. He's 12 years old, and was so, when I met him, he couldn't stop smiling. He had just this, he was looking me right in the eyes, and he said, and I said, well, Muko, you're going to Washington D.C., you're going to New York, you're going to Toronto, you're going to Disney World, you're going to the Kennedy Space Center. I said, which one of those are you looking forward to the most? He said, your event. That's what he
Wow.
said. He is so excited to meet all these other kids and share what he's doing, and that's really the magic behind our event that we've got coming up, because all the kids are so enthusiastic and so positive, and it's just it's an environment that I can't describe, and every year I get frustrated that that the whole world isn't sharing this with us.
Yeah, I wish I could go. If I were rich, I'd definitely fly up there.
Hmm.
But oh well. But tell us about the event. Of course, not all of us are in Maryland, but for those who are in Maryland, tell us where it's going to take place.
Well, it'll be this coming Saturday, actually, September 14th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., and it'll be at the Francis Scott Key Mall, Center Court, in Frederick, Maryland. So, and that's where it is. And as I said, we've got kids coming from 4 different countries. Of
Mm.
course, the United States, Canada, Trinidad and Tobago, and then the United Arab Emirates. And this year's theme is One World, One Community. Since we're bringing all these countries together, we want to get the message of diversity and just friendship and that kind of stuff. So we have lots of things going on. A lot of kids are going to get up and speak. It's great when we can offer these children, and even the little girl, 7-year-old girl, Nicolina. I'm not sure if this is her first time, but I think it might be her first time speaking in public.
Wow,
And you know,
7-year-old.
yeah, and this is such a good experience for them, not only to be able to practice their public speaking, but also to be able to networking with each other, because these kids are going to be leaders in 10 to
Definitely.
15 years. And if they think of a leader who has all these connections of other leaders from all over the world. A couple of years ago, Mary Margaret, we had one of the girls come from Nairobi, Diana, and she had built a girls' school dormitory. She raised $800,000 to build
Whoa.
a girls' school dormitory in Nairobi because, again, the girls were not getting the better treatment. And so she came with her chaperone to the United States to Kids Are Heroes Day.
Wow.
And for some reason, I forget how this happened, but they ended up staying with us. And if you could imagine the opportunity that is for both of them, for both Diana and Diana was older, she was 16, and Mary Margaret was, I guess, 11 at the time. And just to have somebody from a different culture come and stay, and it was really kind of funny because I said, they have to like dogs for one, because we have two huge ones, and
Mhm.
two, do they have any eating requirements or any restrictions that I need to know about? And the brother who is orchestrating everything, he said, no, 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 they love dogs and they'll eat whatever you have. Well, as it turned out, when they came in, scared to death of dogs, and we're both vegetarians.
Oh no.
And
Oops.
so
Awkward.
they taught us later. They told us later they were actually thinking of leaving once they saw these two big dogs. But as by the end of the week, they were fighting over which one was going to walk which one because our
Oh,
dogs are so
that's
cool.
cute.
So yeah, it was. But these are just such good experiences for these children. And what we discovered, and again, a lot of these things we trip over ourselves. But what we discovered, we had an event in Gettysburg, and we had it at a hotel, and the hotel happened to have a swimming pool in the courtyard,
Mhm.
and so we had a reception. We figured since we had the event, we should have a reception for everybody at the hotel, and so it was supposed to be from 6 to 8 p.m. Now, the pool was right there, so the kids are all in the pool. Well, at 10 p.m., we're still waiting for the kids to finish with each other, and the pool finally closed. And so the kids say, okay, let's get dried off, and let's change, and we'll go meet out in the lobby to see where we're going to go next. And these are kids that never met each other that
Right.
morning. And so that's when the light turned on. We said we have to have something like this every time. So it just so happens that the hotel that's next to the mall has a pool right next to the courtyard, and
Mhm.
that's where we have a reception that night for the kids to network with each other. So because these
Wow.
kids can be lifelong friends, so it's
That's
really
really
kind of
nice.
amazing. Hmm.
Now, I have a question for you. And since you're a dad of a very wonderful kid, I suppose you can answer this easily. Um, this ability to help others, is this something inborn? Is it something that a kid, if he's exposed to it early enough, will veer in that direction? Or is it something that can be taught?
Well, that's a very good question, actually. I think with Mary Margaret, since we had dogs all the time, she really had an affinity for animals, and that was her thing. She wanted to save them. I think it's and I always tell this story about when she went to Roy Rogers with her mom, and for some reason, she was like 5 years old.
Hmm.
She said, "Mom, I want to go sit with that older couple." Now she might have been to the nursing home with me a few times. I'm not sure, but she just sat with an old strangers, an
Hmm.
older couple, strangers, and left my wife sitting by herself. And she went up and introduced herself, and she just sat down and had lunch with them. It's amazing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I
Wow.
mean, and So I think there was something in her that yes, I think it was brought into her, but that doesn't mean that, and some kids, if they're not exposed to it, never get to show that part of them.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that's where Kids Are Heroes comes in, because if I'm a parent and I say, Mary Margaret, you need, and I tried this once. I really wanted her to drill a well in Africa. I said, you can do it. You can raise the money. And I
Mhm.
didn't mean to say, didn't have to do what Ryan did. I did just one well. That's all I want is one well. And she said, no, that's not a good idea, Dad. And this is when she was like 10 years old. I
Mhm.
said, what do you mean it's not a good idea? She said, I don't like that idea. I said, I'd rather buy them all umbrellas so that they, in the wintertime, or when it's raining, they can protect them. And when it's sun, they protect them from the sun. And I said, okay, well, that's not too, I don't think that'll work. But what it taught me is you can't tell them what to do. You just
No,
can't,
no.
because it doesn't
Yeah.
work. If you try and tell them what project to work on, they won't. It's not. They don't own it, and they won't go for it.
I think
But
they have to have that passion for it.
right, well, and that's where the website comes in, because there's, for one thing, it's not just 2 or 3 stories. There's like 400 stories on the website, and the kids see, as they read more and more and more about it, they say,
Mhm.
wait a minute, there's all these kids are doing this. This is normal. It's like, what am I missing out here? As opposed
Mhm.
to, oh, that's cute, one kid is doing it. So that we created an atmosphere where it's normal to volunteer. So, and then the child, and they've got other kids speaking to them through the website. So
Mhm.
they're saying, okay, I can do a lemonade stand, or I can do a bake sale, but maybe I don't want to help pediatric cancer. My brother has juvenile diabetes. Maybe I want to help that
Mhm.
cause. And
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
all of a sudden the light goes off in their head. It's
Right.
their idea. They own it. And when they own it, it'll last much longer, and they'll be much more successful at it. So that's really what we've seen. Now, can it be taught? I don't know, if you don't have that. If you're a kid and you go to the website and you don't, it doesn't float your boat, then maybe it's just not the right time. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
for me, I've always been of the mindset that volunteering is not an obligation. It's not something you have to do or should do. It's more of a
Mhm.
privilege. And when I would think I was a big brother when I was in my 20s, but and when that was over, I really didn't do anything. And then I was in my 40s, and then then my dog and I got started on the nursing home thing, and
Mhm.
it was. But I see it as a hobby. It's like some people play golf, some people play basketball. I went to
You help
nursing homes.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just went to nursing homes, and it was just something I did for fun. So I think if you look at it that way, because it really is. My brother does Habitat for Humanity, and he travels all over the world in
Mhm.
all these ungodly places, and he gives out bed kits to kids and stuff like that. And I'm just stunned when I hear his stories. But he does it because that's his fuel, as he said. That's his,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's not being a do-gooder. It has nothing to do with that. It's just something that you find that you enjoy it. So I think that, I don't think it's something that could necessarily be taught, but I think that,
Mhm.
once a person,
I
just,
guess when I said I guess I didn't mean taught as if in a classroom. Like for example, when I was a little kid, I noticed that my grandmother, who I think you would call it seasonal affective disorder now. They get depressed in the
right.
wintertime.
Hmm.
Shorter days. Her birthday was at the end of October. I noticed that she would be sad, starting to get sad during that time of the year. And when her birthday hit, she wouldn't be around. And I was wondering what she was up to. And one day she told me that every birthday she goes to nursing homes and hospitals and visits with people. And
Hmm.
she says it cheered her up, but also cheered them up as well. That was her way of
Absolutely.
dealing with her seasonal affective disorder.
Right. Right.
And that really impressed me as, she felt bad and just the fact that it made her feel better to help others. That really impressed me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, and that's really, I mean, I think it's kind of almost a selfish thing, where, I mean, I'm getting so much out of this That it's not like, oh, look what he's doing. It had nothing to do with that. It's that I'm getting a lot out of this. I mean, it's with you think of with all that's going on in the world with Syria and with all this stuff that the shootings and the mass there's horrible reality television, all this garbage that's amidst us. I have this oasis, this Shangri-La, right in the middle of it, and all I have to do is immerse myself in it, and everything's wonderful because it's hope, it's innocence, it's beauty, and again, it's really hope for the future because these kids haven't figured out that they can't do it yet, and so they're doing it, and if we can empower more kids to do that, then there's more kids that will stand up to bullies. There'll be fewer bullies, and there will be more. What we're really trying to do is create a generational shift where it's normal for kids to volunteer. And a lot of parents. I had this one story about this one girl, young. I think she was a 10-year-old girl. She went to this personal development camp, or I forget what exactly the name of the camp was, but the idea was it was to teach kids about giving back and to teach kids how to do it. And so the girl came home and she had a vision board and she put it up on her wall, and her mom came home and said, what's that? And she said, oh, it's a vision board. I learned about it today, and I'm going to build a homeless shelter by the time I'm 18. And her mother said, you're just a kid. You can't do that kind of stuff. And she tore it down. And and that was, to me, devastating because obviously this woman had never seen our website because these kids can do that. They can do that, and they can do that and much more.
Did that deter the kid from doing it?
Absolutely. Your mother forbid her to do it. And then the person who was teaching her, she had her, she had her hands folded. There's nothing, but she had her hands bound. There's nothing she could do about it. But that was just a story that I learned, and so it's that's just a horrible story. But as I said, there's so many, if you, again, if I think even parents when they come to our site, like you said, really a kid drilled that many wells? Yeah, a kid drilled that many wells. I mean, and it's kind of eye-opening to even us as parents. And if we all of a sudden say, hey, maybe my kid can do this, and if we have the belief in our own children that they can do this kind of stuff, that will help them a lot because they do need our support. And it's not about us doing all the work for them because they are very passionate and they will work very, very hard. Mary Margaret works very hard on Kids Are Heroes, and she does it was funny. We had a discussion about Kids Are Heroes Day today, and I said, well, why don't you do it this way? She goes, no, that's not a good idea. I think it would be much better this way. And I said, okay, that's fine.
Well, she has her own way of doing things.
Well, it's not that. It was that she was right. It had to do with her. She has about 16 or 17 of her friends that are volunteering for that event. And it had to do with the pairing and matching and where we're going to put them. And she said, no, I know these kids. I'd much rather do it this way. And I said, okay, that's fine. I mean, and you got to let them, you got to let them do things. You can't. And I'm sure she made the right decision anyway.
Absolutely. But, You know what I really wish? I used to live in a low-income area of Woodlawn in Chicago. And one thing I noticed, once a year, some nice people would come into our community and fix up one of the schools or whatever. They would tiptoe in on a Sunday when everything was closed, and they would paint and clean and spruce up the outside. Sometimes they go up and down 63rd Street or whatever. And although I thought it was sweet of them to do that, I felt it really was a disservice to our kids because they obviously didn't want to meet any of us. They just wanted to do something for us. And I always felt that volunteers who do this sort of thing should really work with kids so that kids could learn how to give back and learn how to help. Because low-income kids, I think a lot of them just grow up thinking that they have to receive all the time. They're not really worth anything.
Right,
You always
right.
have to give them stuff. And if it weren't for these nice white people or whatever, that they'd be doomed or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I am featuring Kids Are Heroes in the current Durham Skywriter, which is my community paper. It's an online paper, durhamskywriter.com. Because I think kids need to feel that they can help. You don't need money for a lot of it to help others.
Right,
You
right,
could just help people just through your efforts.
right.
And I really think, especially low-income kids, because I hate that feeling of having people to do things for you and then tiptoeing away and not really wanting to meet you. I don't
Mhm.
think they mean it that way, but I took it that way. That they didn't really want to, meet us, touch us, or anything. They just wanted to feel good about what they were doing.
Interesting
So,
perspective. I would. It's too bad you didn't get to sit and talk about them to them about it. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's not wasn't that way at all. Maybe it just needed somebody to start a conversation.
yeah,
But
that's what I think, because their hearts were definitely in the right place. Don't
right,
get me
right.
wrong. It's
Mhm.
not like it's unappreciated, but I just think, like, for example, okay, you see people painting people's houses for free as a church activity or as a volunteer thing. My thing is, once you teach kids how to do things and how to help others, they can turn around and do it themselves.
Right, right.
But if they're sitting watching someone do something for them, that doesn't make them feel any better.
No, that's true. You have a good point. Right. Yeah, and as I said, those two girls from India, you can't get any poorer than those two girls are, and they're making a huge difference. So I do think that any kid has the ability to do something if they're passionate about it. And it's just, again, all the stories are just so heartwarming. Just another one, one of our kids sent me a press that he got yesterday, where his organization is called Bikes for Orphans.
Hmm.
And what he does is he learned that some kids have to walk like 2-3 hours to school, and it's really cutting into their homework time, and it's cutting into a lot of. I mean, just imagine having to do that.
That's
So he
amazing.
decided that he would try and raise money to get bicycles for them, so they could ride their bikes to school. And he did it through an organization that facilitates that kind of thing. And so he raised $5,000, and I don't know, there's like 46 bikes or whatever it was,
Hmm.
and he actually went to the orphanage and taught the older kids how to ride a bike. And he
Oh,
said,
that's right. They wouldn't know how, would they?
That's right.
Wow.
He said I felt like a dad trying to teach my kid how to ride a bike. And he said it was funny because the older kids are struggling with their balance and everything, but once they got it, then they taught the younger kids how to do it. So again, there's just so many stories and the kids, it's typically it's just the kids reacting to something.
Hmm.
And I think low income children, I'm sure, could do the exact same thing.
Absolutely. Because the
Hmm.
passion is there, and a lot of kids want to help others if their parents would let them.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's the other problem, and it's do the parent because the parents have to be again. They don't have to do a lot of the work, but they have to at least be supportive and help guide. Like my daughter said, she wanted to buy all these umbrellas for everybody. I didn't think that was very practical. So what she ended up doing, she changed. She was in the hospital when she was 6 years old,
Hmm.
and it was actually a pretty scary thing. They thought she had leukemia. But so she was in there for 10 days getting all these invasive tests, and she was scared to death. And I could hear her. I'd be in the hallways and I'd hear her scream, and it was, as a parent, it's something that you never want to do. And so she never forgot that, and she said, I want to give something to calm kids down when they're scared or bored in the hospital. And so she ended up getting 250 MP3 players, and she got people to donate music. And so she populated them all, and she gave half of them to Children's Medical Center in D.C. and the other half to Johns Hopkins Children's Center in Baltimore.
Well, how
And
about that?
yeah, and so I mean, and this was again, it's hard to raise money. So when you're saying, okay, I need money for food for this person, then that's easy. It's an easy sell. But when Mary Margaret said, well, I'm buying MP3 players, it was harder for her to raise money just because it's kind of quote-unquote softer charity, but she did it.
So she had to be that much more convincing.
Right, right, absolutely. And I remember we did this. We were allowed to be at this in front of this store downtown in our city. It was in January, and it was from 6 to 9 p.m. I think, and it was cold. It was really cold outside. And I remember this guy coming up. He said, "I read about Mary Margaret in the paper, and I came specifically here to give her $50 for her efforts, because he was so impressed from reading what she was doing in the paper that he came down and gave it to her." But so the kids, and they're willing to sacrifice and to suffer in cold weather, hot weather, whatever it be. They just want to do it, and it just teaches so much character when these kids are doing this kind of stuff. I mean, it's that's the other thing that I like about the event, Kids Are Heroes Day, is that all these kids, there's not one brat among them. There's all the kids are so upstanding and so giving and such wonderful people. They're wonderful people at whatever age they are.
Cool too, huh?
Yes, their parents are really wonderful, and it's been a pleasure to meet all of them. And my biggest letdown is the day after, because everybody goes home and and all that work is done, but then you have the memories for the excuse me, and the ensuing year. So anyway.
So how does a young person who might be watching this, how does a young person get started in becoming a hero, so to speak?
Well, typically how it works is parents sit down with their kids at the website and read through the stories with them, and they just discuss things. The parent's not trying to influence the child in any way, just trying to answer questions about what a person might what's juvenile diabetes, or what's what's pediatric cancer, or whatever, and then the conversation gets started, but the child is leading the conversation, and then something might spark from just doing that, and typically that's exactly what happens. They'll read enough stories to say, I've always wanted to do this, and now I'm getting the confidence I can do it, and so then the discussion goes as how they get started and how they can do it, and they all of a sudden, a few months later, I'll get a nomination that so and so did this, and this is what happened, and
so is it like a club? So they go to kidsareheroes.org, and is it like joining a club, so to speak? Or?
Well, no. What they just go, the kids can go individually to the website and look at the Lily's Heroes section and read the stories and just get inspired by them, and again, with parents as a guide to get started on something. And it's usually, they could bring their friends. They could say, hey, maybe I want to do this with my friends. That's great. And so they all look at the site and they decide together or whatever. We also have in that section, we do have a Become a Hero section that's got a few ideas in there. We've got question and answers that they can pose to us. But for the most part, the kids just run with the stories. They might want to find somebody in their country or in their state or province or whatever to see what those kids are doing, and maybe that influences them, or maybe it's just just some story. Usually, again, I think it's a combination of things, because there's so many stories that gives them the confidence to know that they can do it too. They say, well, these kids aren't any different than I am, and they all go to school. They all they're in 6th grade, 7th grade, whatever grade they're in. They can, so they know that they can do it, and then by reading the different stories, they pick and choose what appeals to them, and maybe they've already had this passion for whatever charity, but never knew really never had the push, the spark to get started with it. But that's what it helps with.
I'm wondering how this helps a young person later in life. I don't know how old your daughter is now.
She's 14 now.
Okay, so I can't really say later in life. But I'm just curious. How do you think this is going to affect her later when she leaves the nest, so to speak, or even as she applies for college?
Well, I think it's incredible what this kind of activity does. I mean, I'm watching all these kids that are becoming world leaders because of it. Diana, the girl that we mentioned, that we talked about earlier, who raised $800,000, she's in law school in Kent in the UK right now.
Uh-huh.
And Jordan Urbach, if you Google him, you know, he's going to be beyond leader. And Ryan Hurljack again, he speaks with Jane Goodall. I mean, all these kids, when they get to be that age, if they pursued it, if they've continued on, they're almost like celebrities. I don't want to call them, and I don't really like that word, but they.
Well, but not in a bratty way, though.
Right, right. No,
It's
they're
become
they're,
well known.
they're
Yeah.
like a Jane Goodall is a celebrity for what she's done.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, and so you know, so with Mary, as I said, it teaches leadership skills, and you know, Mary Margaret's already got so many things on her resume now. Her school, she had to apply to her high school. She goes to a private school, and she had to be accepted. And they couldn't. They were stepping over each other trying to get her in because of what she's already done. And she's a student ambassador for the school. She represents the school. You know, and she's got a partial scholarship right now, and you know, so it just goes on and on. I mean, and plus she has so much poise, and I think that, you know, when you speak in public, I mean, she was much more relaxed than I was, and speaking, because we both did it, and speaking in front of the 500, she was. She just told me the other day she was really looking forward to that. She really wanted to do it, and she nailed it. She absolutely nailed it.
Wow.
And then if you look at her piece on the Ricky Lake Show, it's like she's been doing it forever. It was I was so proud of her. So I know that if she keeps this up, absolutely, because her next step is she's applying for to be a global teen leader through another organization called 3.Dash, and these folks are amazing. They're basically take our kids and then take them to the next level, anywhere from 13 to 19. They get a week's worth of mentoring. They connect them up with all kinds of people, and it's very competitive to get into that.
Wow.
But the girl Diana is a global teen leader, and so as many kids from our site have graduated from their program. And it's not just a leadership conference, because Mary Margaret's been to a few of those, but this is something that's much farther, much beyond that. And I mean, this is a life-changing opportunity. So our fingers are crossed that she'll get accepted this year, and be able to go in April.
That is wonderful. I know she's going to get accepted. That's
well, I hope so. It's, as I said, they only take 30 kids out of 300, and if you go to their site, these kids, like, and one of them, he's
and
actually.
What is it? You said
3.dash.org.
Okay, I'm just jotting that down.
It means something. It means something. There's like a whole thing behind it, but it has to do with peace. I think it was inspired by the events of 9/11, and it was a musician that's behind it. Niles Rogers, I think his name is, and he started this thing, and now he's got all these kids that are. I mean, these kids are amazing. Not the one that comes to my mind is Yash Gupta, who he's just, you know, this kid was just a normal kid. One day he broke his glasses, and he couldn't afford to get them fixed for like a week or whatever. So he went all week without glasses, and he realized how much he really depended on them, and he couldn't stand being without his glasses. And then after he got them fixed, he wondered. He said, "Well, what about kids who really can't afford it, who can never really afford glasses in the first place? What do they do?" So he did some research, and he found out all these kids and all over the world who don't have glasses but need them. And so he went to his optometrist, and he said, "Well, can we get, you know, like a collection bin, so people throw away their old glasses and put it in here?" So he started with that, and he went to a few others.
That's smart.
And then he ended up with something like 12,000 pairs of glasses that he's been delivering and all over the world. Now he's a CNN hero.
Oh my goodness.
You know, he went through the 3.Dash program, and now he's, I mean, it's just an amazing story. And yeah, and again,
sometimes it just takes a little common sense,
right,
commonsensical
and
thinking.
passion.
Oh, Yeah.
passion to come, because it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I mean, I say, well, he collected 12,000 pairs of glasses. It's not easy to do that. What Mary Margaret has done has not been easy for us. None of it is easy, but these kids are willing to take the struggle. Another story that comes to my mind is this boy who he visited. He's a Canadian boy, and he visited a remote area in Canada, and I forget why he visited there in the first place, but he realized, he said, "Where's your playground?" I said, "Well, we don't have one." He said, "How do you not have a playground in your town?" He said, "Well, we don't have one." So he was determined to build one for them. So he went, and they're not cheap. They're like $25,000. So he actually
Oh.
won a contest with Pepsi, and I think they gave him, I forget how much money. And he's built a few playgrounds up there, but he wants to see one in every one of those remote communities. And he's actually talked to the government. He's gone
Oh
to the
my
government
goodness.
to get them to
How
do
old is
that.
this kid?
When I met him, he was 11. He's probably now, he's about Mary Margaret's age. He's probably about 14 now. And
Hmm.
just determined, just determined to keep going. Oh, what he did was, um, I think it was the first thing that he did was, I think it was against homeless people. He camped out for 3 days in March in Canada,
Oh.
and to kind of make a demonstration about homeless people, and he raised some money. I think that was the first thing that he did, and just absolutely. And he's, you know what, when he came to one of our events, he's a funny kid. He's got a great sense of humor, and
Hmm.
he's just a, a lot of these kids are just kids. They're normal kids, except for they have this
They're just
thing that,
really nice kids.
right, they have this passion for doing this stuff, and I haven't seen, they're all benefiting from it, later on.
That's so wonderful. I really appreciate Gabe O'Neill telling us about this. This is just wonderful. Now, you're doing something on your own, right? For people in our age group on Thursdays at 8 o'clock. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I recently got laid off myself, and I realized that it was not easy for some of the older people and the baby boomers basically to get work. And
Yeah.
I've always been kind of an entrepreneur anyway, so I thought, well, let me start my own company. I'm a software developer by trade, so I'll start this application development company. I included a friend of mine from North Carolina because he's also out of work, and also he's brilliant, and he
Hmm.
shouldn't be out of work. So let me see if we can get some of these baby boomers hired, and that's why we call it Silver Force Technologies. It's in a company that we lead as an application development company, but at some point we're also a social enterprise, and what we're trying to do is trying to, if some of these people have had work for years,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden they find themselves laid off without work, and they say, well, I got to send in my resume, or I got to go. And no, you don't do that anymore. I mean, you can do that, but I think firmly convinced that the only way you're going to get work, especially if you have the silver hair, is through people that you know. And
Hmm.
that's where social media comes in. That's where face-to-face networking comes in. And so what we do is we try and talk about effective ways to use LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, all these different things. We try and share effective ways to use these to help stay relevant in today's workforce. So
Well, something
that's
happened to me earlier today which blew my mind. I won't mention any names, but there was a person who in Washington, D.C., was involved with a nonprofit that promotes jazz.
hmm
And I noticed that a certain musician had posted something, and I decided to chime in. I used to work at the Jazz Institute of Chicago. They
okay.
promote jazz. That's right before I moved here.
hmm
So I just said, I really, as much as I love North Carolina, I really miss my job. This was on Facebook. This was all on Facebook.
Right.
And this particular jazz musician who has met me said, would you be interested in working with so-and-so from so-and-so? And I said, let's talk. Absolutely. I don't
Right.
think this opportunity would have come otherwise because I put in applications all over the place. I'm 57. And I can't remember the last time I've had a job interview. Really, it's really
Right.
tough out here.
Right.
But through Facebook, I'm realizing, as much as I think Facebook is kind of messy and not as neat and categorized as Google Plus, but I'm realizing that's where the people are, and that's where you can make connections. And maybe something will come of it, maybe not. But I'm just thrilled that this opportunity, possible, something might happen, and it's
Right.
through social media. I'm thinking
Right.
maybe, I mean, I think you're right. Maybe we should learn about this social media thing.
Well, I'm totally convinced because for one, I happen to have been using it with Kids Are Heroes avidly. I went unwillingly to do it because I didn't want to be involved with it. But I asked my friend who was very well known. I said, "How do I promote this organization?" He said, "Facebook and Twitter," and that was 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, "Oh, please, no." But once I saw the value, once I basically forced it down my own throat. And once I saw the value, I said, "Wait a minute, there is something here." And I've been using it. I've been very active in that, and I'm learning more about LinkedIn, and we have had that's how we got on the Ricky Lake Show, was through Twitter. And we've got,
Really?
yeah, and we met Richard Branson because somebody on Twitter knew that I was a big fan, and that he actually, but it wasn't just a celebrity kind of fan thing.
Wait,
We
I
actually,
know. I know that name. Who is that?
Richard
Richard Branson.
Branson is the owner of all the Virgin companies. He's
Oh, okay,
a
okay.
multi-billionaire from England who basically quit high school and started his own business, and he's been ever since. He's got Virgin America, Virgin Phones, Virgin Records, Virgin all this other stuff,
Wow.
and so I thought,
He quit high school? Wow.
yeah, and I
Oh.
thought, well, what's when I first saw the interview of him, I said, what's the big deal about this guy other than the fact he's really rich? But he created the Elders with Peter Gabriel, and the Elders are a group like Desmond Tutu and Kofi Annan, and
Wow.
Jimmy Carter. They put them
Wow.
all together, and they go to troubled places and try and get them to change their policy. And so
Hmm.
he created that. He's been a big right now he's against shark finning and ocean pollution. He's doing so much philanthropy and goodwill in the world, and I've been kind of we've been he was part of the inspiration for me to get started with Kids Are Heroes, and
Hmm.
plus we won a contest of his um, along the way that through social media that we ended up our pitch got put on one of his planes and went on Virgin Atlantic planes for a month. So people knew that I was connected to him, and so they said, "Hey, he's going to be in Richmond," and that's like only 2 hours away from us.
Okay.
And it just happened to be at a children's charity event where Disruptive Thinking Conference was benefiting children's charity. So I emailed the person down there, and they said, "Why don't you guys speak?" And so we did. That's how we got that.
Wow.
And so, there's so many and, as I said, Ricky Lake Show. We've been ex-NFL players we've been connected to from Twitter. So,
Huh.
I think it's really, it's that's where you really when you can't do it face to face.
Hmm.
There's and you're the phone's not ringing, and nothing's happening, and you're driving yourself crazy. Just get on social media and start connecting with people. I mean, it's so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help people who are not necessarily that used to it, and trying to get them more acclimated to it, because I think that's really it's not what you know, it's who you know anymore,
So
especially
that's
now.
what you're teaching them on Thursdays at 8 o'clock? Because you have your own show, Google Plus
Yeah,
Hangout, so to speak.
right. They're the Silver Force Hangouts, and generally we talk about social media effective ways of in different things and different
Hmm.
we just try and encourage people who are out of work and looking for it. But at the same time, I think it works for people that just need to promote something on social media and don't know how to do it, because
Sure.
it's all the same thing. You're promoting yourself, you're promoting a business. So it's people that are using it effectively, and we're kind of
Hmm.
picking their brain as to how they do it, and sharing and all that. So
Now,
it's a fun hour. It really is.
now, I know what you're saying about older people looking for work, but I wanted to point out one thing. when I was still living in Chicago, I had a little newspaper called the South Side Scoop, and obviously it was on the South Side. Many of my advertisers were, or most of them, were mom and pop businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out, to my surprise, this is something I just didn't know, in a lot of the communities, the businesses are very often run by retired people. And that is people, like there's this guy, okay, he was an advertiser of mine. Um, he ran a company called the Illinois Casket Company. He was a retired executive from IBM
Mm-hmm.
and didn't want to retire and put his feet up. He started a business, and I found out that most of my advertisers, it seemed, now, granted, I was in low-income black communities, Woodlawn, Inglewood, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I was really shocked, and it was really interesting to me to see that many of these business owners are retired people who wanted to either live out their dream, follow their passion, or just do something by starting a business.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm wondering, do you think that now's a good time to start thinking about that? I know this is a tough economy, but
Well,
I'm wondering if do you think people in our age group, 50s or whatever, 40s, 50s,
if
should take that
well,
step?
well, I mean, that's what I did. I know that because if the way I looked at it, if I got another job, because I was laid off from a job that I've been working for 16 years,
Hmm.
and it might sound like I'm kind of I don't know what it's going to come off sounding like, but it wasn't my fault that I was laid off. It was the people that made the decisions. They made some really stupid decisions, and I even told them that. And they said, "Well, you get your own company, you make your decisions." So I said,
Hmm.
"Okay, maybe I will." But I mean, it was through no fault of my own. I lost this
Hmm.
job,
Well, I've been
and,
laid off
and
a couple times too.
yeah, and then, but the thing is, I figured, okay, so now if I get another job, I'm placing because the job I had before that, we had a big win, and the people up at the top, they fell over each other trying to control it, and they ended up destroying it. And so
Hmm.
all these things that are out of my hands are getting kind of ruined. So if I go to another job, I'm risking the exact same thing to happen, where I could get laid off or whatever or want to quit.
Hmm.
And so I thought, and I'm not getting any younger, so I said, well, why don't I just start my own company? And because I can, that's the thing. You can start your own company at any age, and you don't have to fire yourself. You can keep working. But there are some people who simply don't have that mindset. They want that corporate existence. They want, the security of going to work every day, of not having the stress of owning a business. As much as people, I've kind of learned this recently where some people that I've kind of come in contact with, I say, well, you should own your own business, but you just know that that's not them. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not in their
Yeah.
makeup. So,
Plus, it is nice to have medical benefits.
right, yes,
It's a Yeah, it's a nice
absolutely,
thing to have.
absolutely, yeah,
Although
so,
I suppose as an entrepreneur, you can still do that. You can. I don't know if you know about NASE. I think they have things like insurance and medical
well, I've just been
type
talking with,
packages.
it's just coincidentally been talking with another gentleman he was a big executive and he was making over $100,000 a year.
Hmm.
Now he works at Lowe's, and he also has a business where he sells discount health care. It's not insurance. It's discount health care. He was trying to explain it to me, but basically you pay a certain fee, $50 a month,
Hmm.
and whatever procedures that you have to have done are much discounted. So I think
That
that's kind
sounds
of
like prepaid legal. Same concept, probably.
sort of. Yeah, I think
Hmm.
so.
That might
So
be something
there's
to look into, also.
yeah. So there are certain things you can do, and then one of my cohorts, we were talking about this on our show last time. One of my cohorts said that he pays 200 a month, and he's protected against like a major event. So there are other alternatives, and
Hmm.
but yeah, if you're successful, obviously you can pay your own health insurance, and you don't have that problem. So
Right, right. Well, I wanted to thank you, Gabe O'Neill, for being on the show. I want to congratulate your daughter, Mary Margaret. I mean, she must be totally amazing. It's too bad she's doing her homework right now, but that's okay. Maybe
Right,
she can
right.
come on a later show, because I'd like to invite you back.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, again, thanks for having me, and we really appreciate it. So, thank you.
Okay. Okay, folks, so if you would like to be on TV Skywriter, all you have to do is to just drop me a line at durhamskywriter@gmail.com. I talk with, like I said, entrepreneurs, just creative people, writers, musicians, whatever. Just write me, and I'll see if I can get you on the show. With that, have a great week. I'll see you next Sunday. Ciao.